everyone. It's not even 6 o'clock and I'm already working with pens. And recently on eBay I bought a lot of pens. These are 2 of the 3. Here's the 3rd. And I bought these for Frankenpenning. And why they're good, I'll explain. I've explained before, but I'll explain again. Why these larger off-brand pens are good is because they are cheap and non-collectible for the most part, even though they might be very pretty looking. No one has a collection of Park Row pens, and no one has a collection of Watterson pens. Well, they might have a pile of them somewhere, but they would never have a dedicated collection of either one of these pen companies because they're not very good. But what they are good for is supplying perfectly good bodies for dip pen nibs. Now, dip pen nibs are the Victorian dip pen nibs that are 14 karat gold that came originally in pens that look something like this. And this pen, even this has been screwed up. Anyway, this pen, this holder had a nib in it, which I've since put somewhere, I don't know where. And but let me explain to you why I use the pens I use. A dip pen nib, a dip pen holder, the shape of the thing that the receptacle, the holder part that holds the nib in, is not round. It is slightly flattened at the top. So if you were to take that nib out of that pen and stick it in a regular fountain pen that it would normally fit in, you'd end up, it's like sticking a round peg in a square hole, you'd end up deforming this shape. So often what I do is I will find pens that have originally steel nibs in them, like this pen, and I'll take the steel nib out. Now the steel nib is thicker in cross-section than a gold nib, and that extra little space, this is very loose in here, it's not as tight as a normal fountain pen would be, but what that allows is you to put if I were to put a regular fountain pen nib, here's a Waterman nib, look, it just doesn't stick at all, you know. But if I were to put a nib that is slightly flattened like this, it holds it in tightly without deforming the nib. Yes, I can hear you saying there's a gap at the top. Yes, there is a gap at the top. There's space up here, but that's perfectly fine. You're not harming this pen. You're not harming the gold nib. You can always put it back in this thing when you're done. The steel nib you take out of this pen, you can throw away. It's not going to make anyone happy, except for the collector of the Watterson Pen Company, but they've got other problems. Another thing that these, I'll just call them what they are to my mind, shitty pens, these less good pens, is they often don't have inner caps. This one does because it's holding the clip on. This one does as well, but sometimes they don't have inner caps and the threads don't always work. These threads don't work at all. But if you're using your pen to do calligraphy, and these dip pen nibs are good for calligraphy, they're not as good for drawing because they're too springy. Sometimes you want to make sure that there's a lot of room up here to leaves so the top of the nib doesn't hit the top of the pen and break. So sometimes I like using slip caps for Frankenpens. Sometimes pens like this are okay. Here the threads don't really work. I mean, I might be able to shove it in and twist it, but I'm more than happy to just do that. And there's enough space for the nib to live without a problem. This one, I haven't quite put this back together again. I haven't put a sack on it. But this one has a dip nib that came from this pen. It's not a great nib. I think that this is sorry, I'm just dipping it in water here. I think this is this is not a great tip nib, but it's good enough. Maybe it's better now that it's in this pen. Oftentimes when I try it on using the actual dip pen holder, I don't find it works as well as when I actually put it in one of these things. So this is a better nib than I initially thought. But look at that great variety of line you can get. And what's really nice about these older dip pen nibs is they have a very fast return. And what I mean is they go from, yes, any pen can go from 0 to 60. But from 60 back to 0, that's to have it snap back, excuse me, snap back right away. That's what these older nibs do a lot better than fountain pen nibs. Fountain pen nibs, I think, are shaped just slightly differently, that they don't, it doesn't work very well. So what I'm doing with pens like this, the Park Row and the Watterson and other, lesser quality pens, here's a Jefferson, whatever that is. These are all pens that are going to be good bodies to put really nice nibs into. Now I could use Parker Duofolds, I could use Schaefer Seniors, I could use Waterman Ripples, and I have done that, but those have such nice nibs in them already that I feel sort of like, why am I doing that? But these pens, which can look nice from far away, especially from far away. I mean, the plastic on this one is quite lovely. The metal here is kind of crappy, but again, from far away it looks pretty good. This one I like because of the, I haven't cleaned this up yet, but because of the sort of teal turquoise tops. And I have to find a nib for this one, but again, I'm making them useful rather than sitting in an appropriate junk drawer. They now are holding a perfectly lovely pen and can make beautiful writing and sometimes drawing. So there you go. So I'll get back to my other work I have to do, and the cat here is telling me I'm talking too much. His tail is hitting me. I'm being flagellated by the cat's tail. So there you go.